Well, my name is Paul Sunderland. I've been an addiction psychotherapist for about 35 years. And I came into this work actually having had an experience with addiction as a 23-year-old, going to rehabilitation then, which was a very new thing in this country. I was a heroin addict and a bit of a lost boy. And I came into recovery and I guess had an experience that I wanted to pass on. So what I like most about my work is there's an opportunity to help people to recover. And the marvelous thing about addiction is that if people want to recover, they can and kill in so many different ways. But if people want to get well, it is possible. And it's a real privilege to be part of that journey for people, helping people to help themselves. It used to be that addiction was thought about in terms of just alcoholism. And what we now know is that actually addiction isn't so much about a substance, it's about the need to change the way that somebody feels. Is that we see it as an all-consuming relationship with a substance, but also actually with a behavior that is motivated by a conscious or unconscious desire to change the way that one feels, that results in a range of harmful consequences. And that's the important bit, the harmful consequences, because in a sense, addiction is repeated use despite knowledge that it's not in my best interests. Now, the other thing about addiction is it is both a primary disease, but it's also a symptom of a distress. People don't get out of bed the wrong side. It doesn't suddenly happen to them. Actually, it builds up over a period of time. But you can't deal with anything until you actually help people manage the loss of control over mood-altering chemicals. And it's really important for us to acknowledge that we are talking about disease, particularly as it has such a stigma and such a shame, because people who suffer from addiction, they are hijacked by their behavior. And they end up doing all sorts of things that they never thought that they would do. I think the issue of addiction is particularly difficult for pharmacists and other healthcare professionals, particularly because they are concerned with healthcare and somehow feel that, this shouldn't happen to me, or I'm not good enough if I'm struggling with this. Very often, the pharmacists might be locum pharmacists and work alone, or might be employed full-time, but actually be the only pharmacist, or certainly maybe the only pharmacist on duty. And I think there's a sense of responsibility, a sense of sort of management as well, that can make asking for help and being vulnerable very difficult. I think it's lonely. I think it's a fast-changing profession. There's a lot of ongoing learning, but not a lot of opportunity for support. And so I would really want, and it's one of the things that excites me about Pharmacist Support, is there's an acknowledgement of you need support. It's okay to be vulnerable. And what's more, if you can't be vulnerable and you don't make it okay, you could really suffer. Well, the advice that I would give to somebody who suffers from alcohol or other drug problems, or indeed any other addictions, is to understand that nothing can change unless it's acknowledged. Addiction grows in the dark. There's a real stigma, but the real shame would be in not doing something about it, because it has such an impact on every area of functioning. And that's what we've seen. And of course, for a pharmacist, it has all sorts of fitness to practice issues. It has legal issues. It has family relational issues. It has health issues, physical and mental. So it's a very key concept. You can only change what you acknowledge. Chances are, you are experiencing a powerlessness, not a weakness, not a badness, but a powerlessness. And you're going to need to talk to someone about that. And because you will not be able to do something about it on your own. Well, there's a range of options available to people who have difficulties with alcohol and drugs, and it depends very much on severity. One of the reasons I'm involved with Pharmacist Support, I believe, is to offer some sort of assessment to assess, with the client, what is going on, what's been going on, what do we need to do to come up with a plan of recovery together. For many people suffering from addiction, there's a real sense of disconnection and not belonging. There's an awful lot that comes from talking to someone else and realizing that your suffering actually has a universality. I'm not the only one. If you are a pharmacist student, trainee pharmacist, or pharmacist in Great Britain, please feel free to get in touch with Pharmacist Support. It would be such a shame to not have the opportunity of recovery. You know, what you're struggling with isn't about weakness or badness. You know, we're seeing addiction and dependency as a disease. It will only get worse if it's not addressed. You know, we can provide a confidential space to help assess your difficulties with you and to come up with some advice.